Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. Today is 23rd July 2023. My name is T.S.V. Raghavan and I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. This is my spiritual vlog on YouTube. Haribol TRSV Nectar NECTAR Nectar. In this particular vlog, in all my previous videos, we have been discussing about the knowledge and information that we have gleaned through the study of spiritual books, scriptures, contemplation on the material universe, and meditation on the spiritual universe. This particular video in this vlog is no exception to that rule. In fact, it is a mere continuation of what we have been doing in all my previous videos. Kindly subscribe to this vlog and press the bell icon so that I may keep reminding you of all my previous videos. So let us continue with the topic for today's discussion. For the past few videos, we have been discussing about the human psyche of every human living entity during a particular birth in this material world. We know that there are four major factors along with other subsidiary factors which influence the building up of a psyche of a human living entity. These four major factors are: first, the prarabdha karma or the slice of sanchit karma that a living entity who brings with him or her during a particular lifetime or birth to work out in that particular lifetime. In other words, there is a storage of past unworked karma in the already existing memory of that particular living entity. This particular unworked karma is known as sanchit karma. From this sanchit karma, a slice is taken by a living entity to be born with in a particular birth to work it out in that particular birth, whether the living entity is a male or a female. Now, this is the first factor that influences the psyche of that living entity in that particular lifetime. The second is his or her kriyamana karma. This kriyamana karma is the result of his or her using his or her free will or applying his or her free will in that particular lifetime to do some new karma to be either worked out in that particular lifetime or to be worked out in another lifetime. This new karma, which is called Kriyamana karma, is the second factor that influences the psyche of that particular living entity. The third factor is known as vibrations. These vibrations emanate from the three layers of subtle body of a living entity. These three layers are known as causal body of intelligence and logic, astral body of mind, feelings, and emotions, and the five etheric senses which are packed in a particular body, which is the third layer of subtle body and is closest to the final gross body. This gross body boasts of an instrument called brain, which is nothing but a mass of tissue at the top of the head of that particular living entity. This brain receives transmissions of vibrations from the subtle bodies of causal intelligence, astral mind, and etheric senses. Depending upon the preferences, tastes, whims, fantasies, and evolvement of a living entity, these vibrations are selected by the brain to be masticated and chewed upon before a particular juice is extracted and further downloaded into the gross body for that particular living entity to react in a particular fashion in a birth or in a lifetime. In other words, this third factor is responsible for a lot of reaction of a particular living entity in a lifetime. His or her prarabdha karma along with his or her kriyamana karma largely operates because of this transmission of juice from the brain of that gross body of that living entity. The fourth factor is known as false ego. This false ego arises when a living entity, whether male or female, identifies himself or herself in a particular lifetime according to his or her four layers of material body. In other words, the material body is the identity of that particular living entity in a particular lifetime because of his or her false ego. This false ego acts as a catalyst in the reaction of the vibrations of the brain along with the Kriyamana karma plus the Prarabdha karma. These four, along with some subsidiary factors, base the psyche of a living entity and impose it upon a particular living entity during a particular lifetime. There is a particular proverb in English: as you think, so you become. This is an indirect hint on the fact that when these factors act together as a permutation and combination in the case of a living entity, so does that person think and then react. This is one broad explanation of how a human psyche works. We have been discussing about several case histories which would explain and authenticate this particular subject and theory for the sake of the viewer and the student of spiritualism and the viewer of this particular vlog. Today we shall talk about another such case history which will explain this particular process further to the viewer of this video. So let us begin. There is a province called Sindh which was a part of undivided India before the partition of India in 1947. This province of Sindh went to the newly born country of Pakistan and is still in that particular country. In this province of Sindh, on 14th September 1923, that is almost 24 years before the partition, one boy was born into a very respectable and decent Sindhi family. Sindhis are those who reside in Sindh and who belong to that particular community which originates from Sindh. This particular boy was christened Ram because of his family surname was Jethmalani. So this boy's full name became Ram Jethmalani. This boy, right from his childhood, had a cerebral faculty that bordered on genius. This boy was extraordinarily academically erudite and qualified. He was a brilliant student right from the beginning of his small or young life. This boy's prarabdha karma began the moment he was born in that family as Ram Jethmalani. Because of his very good deeds, he had got a slice of life from his Sanchit karma, which became his prarabdha karma and made him a very intelligent student. So brilliant was this student that, believe it or not, he was a graduate and a lawyer, a full-fledged lawyer by the time he was 16 or 17. This sounds incredible, but it is indeed a fact. This boy became a lawyer at the age of 17 and then he began practicing law, first in Karachi and then in the commercial city of Bombay in today's India. Bombay, which is called Mumbai, is the commercial capital of the state of Maharashtra in India. Because of his brilliance, and extraordinary talent. This boy, when he began doing private practice as a lawyer, had his practice pick up within days, and he came up in leaps and bounds, day after day, night after day, night after night. This happened in such a way that within a few years, this boy became one of the most prominent lawyers in Indian legal department. This boy slowly climbed up the rungs of success in the ladder of law advocacy and legal matters, and soon he was hailed as a criminal from constitutional lawyer. So powerful did he become by his early 30s that he was respected in all the courts in India as a very erudite and capable lawyer. Till now, this boy's prarabdha karma was working, and it had brought him to this dizzy level of success. However, because of this boy's free will, this boy started applying his own Kriyamana karma, which took him from legal expertise to a talent to make money out of his profession. This boy, who could have done very well by supporting genuine cases which could have been less lucrative but more answering to his conscience, chose to represent all sorts of criminals, illegitimate or illegal guys, but very wealthy clients who would pay him well for even one sitting in the court. This included smugglers, criminals, murderers, and such notorious characters who were hated by the society and who the society bade for blood of. In other words, when those guys, those criminals were being angrily pursued by the society, this very brilliant lawyer came to the rescue of those very criminals just because of their financial backing to support them in the court of law. Initially, the public ignored this, but later it became more and more cynical towards Mr. Ram Jethmalani. Yes, it was a fact that he had become quite powerful in his legal and political status, but that does not mean that the public was skeptical about this man's actual psyche. In other words, the second factor of Kriyamana karma was shaping up the present psyche of the same Ram Jethmalani, who could have done wonders as a nice lawyer who answered to his conscience for the sake of this humanity and society, just because it would not have paid him that much as it did when he began representing not so savory characters of the society. Some cases were so notorious that the awestruck public looked on with horror when he represented such trends in the courts of law. Just because of his erudition, his expertise, and his fame and power, this guy almost always won those cases on behalf of such unsavory characters to the horror of not only the legal world but also the society. This was this second factor, Kriyamana Karma, born out of his free will that was working to shape up his psyche. Not only that, the vibrations from the third factor, that is, vibrations from the subtle bodies of that Ram Jethmalani into his brain were selected according to his own whims, fantasies, and greed for money and power, as a result of which, not satisfied with his own earnings as an advocate, this guy joined politics too. Believe it or not, guys who could not have dared to speak about such an erudite person before began actually sneering and jeering at Ram Jethmalani just because of his operation of his own vibrations from his subtle body into the brain. This man, who stood tall according to his prarabdha karma in the beginning, became actually a laughing stock in the same society where he could have become a living legend. A living legend he did become, but not a very respectable living legend. When it came to bartering, this man chose his own money and fame to his own conscience and character. This was because of his second and third factors, along with his own false ego of identifying with his body as Ram Jethmalani in this particular birth. This guy was extremely egoistic, cynical, skeptical, sarcastic, and overconfident, as a result of which he rubbed quite a few shoulders, and because of that he sought and got anonymity from several people from various sections of the society in this lifetime. These included representatives of the legal world as well as the political world. Nevertheless, this dogged guy went on bull-headed and barged into this theater of cheap fame and name, and he got a powerful status as a politician, a member of the parliament, and a very, very well paid lawyer. In fact, At one time, he became such a highly paid lawyer that his fees was unbearable to the ordinary clients of the legal world. Nobody could afford his fees because it went to almost 1 to 2 lakhs per sitting, and only criminals and underworld gangsters, etc., could afford such high fees. Even among them, the less rich had to drop him sooner or later, more sooner than later. His retainership included those who were underworld dons like Daud Ibrahim, Haji Mastan, and other such very notorious gangsters. Anyway, because of this guy's free will and the vibrations from his newly born subtle body in that particular lifetime, this human living entity made up such a mountain of karma that it is doubted that he could have worked it out in this particular lifetime itself. Ram Jethmalani was born because of extraordinarily great Sanchit karma, and the Prarabdha karma for this birth was based on such brilliant, ordinarily existing Sanchit karma, already existing Sanchit karma. But because of his own Kriyamana karma based on his free will in this particular lifetime, he collected such unworked karma that would have colored his own Sanchit karma and gave it a negative vibe for future birth of this particular human living entity. To make it precise, I would say that in future, if the same living entity took a slice of his Sanchit karma, the possibility of it being colored by this lifetime's Kriyamana karma is there, as a result of which it is doubtful that that prarabdha karma in a future birth would be so good, so pure, and so noble as it was in the beginning of the lifetime of this particular living entity called Ram Jethmalani in this particular birth. We must take a leaf out of the life of Mr. Ram Jethmalani. We should learn never to compromise our conscience and character for the sake of a few pieces of silver or for some cheap name, fame, and power. We must always use our own free will and Kriyamana karma to improve our character and conscience in every birth, including this and the future ones, so that one day we become totally spiritual, leave all this material world, get self realized, get liberated from this endless cycle of birth and death and finally get delivered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Kindly let me know what you think of my talk on this particular case history. Please give me your own expert thoughts, opinions, views, and ideas so that I may blend everything together for the sake of this particular society. Before concluding, let me remind you that I am also a published author with Amazon Kindle and paperback. I write on spiritualism, fiction, and assorted subjects. Spiritualism happens to be my favorite subject. Till we meet in my next video, it is good morning from TSV Raghavan.